It's a Note to You with Virginia Eskin, and today we're listening to the music of Arthur Foote. And we turn to chamber music, and Virginia, you have recorded his second trio in a manner which you describe quite literally as a recording marathon.
Well, once a year, Boston gives over to many, many runners. And we recorded this at the Houghton Chapel, which is a beautiful, big, sort of Gothic building on the grounds of Wellesley College. And we completely forgot about the helicopters that cruise around looking down at all the runners during the marathon. And it put unbelievable restraints on the recording session because we would do a take, and then all of a sudden we'd hear on the voiceover that it was ruined by helicopters. So we finally just stayed there and ate a lot of junk food, which is what you do at recording sessions, and waited for nightfall when the runners would stop, and then we laid down the trio.
Glancing over the list of music that Arthur Foote composed, one thing is very striking, that there is only one multi-movement standard form orchestral work, the cello concerto. Right. No symphonies, no other concertos. But there are 3-string quartets, 2 piano trios, a piano quartet, a quintet, sonatas for violin, viola, and cello. Why do you suppose that they were these fully developed romantic-sized chamber works, but yet none of an orchestral type?
I think that he intellectually was more interested in the beauty of the short phrase. And when you mount a full-scale attack, as you do in a symphony, you need an enormous amount of material that's burning up inside your brain. And if you wanted to be pejorative, you would say that Foote didn't have that kind of vision or imagination. You know, you can also be very negative on Mendelssohn. There's even weak Schumann. Some of the violin sonatas have to literally be, you have to carve away a lot of the underbrush. I remember being at Marlborough and watching Rudolf Serkin leave out a lot of notes. And I was turning pages, and I thought, is he faking? And then afterwards he turned, as only Rudy could, he said, I have my tricks for making this sound better.
Well, you have made a number of Foote's chamber pieces sound pretty good yourself. How many of them have you recorded?
Not enough, because I love Arthur Foote. Just the trio and those cello pieces and some violin pieces, and I think some more are going to come out soon, the piano quartet and some of the other violin pieces. There's a ballade and short salon pieces, really, that are very deserving. He states the case very nicely. There's the melody, and then there's the development, and he can throw in a fugue like the best of them. And let's listen to the first movement of his B-flat trio, which received its premiere at Isabella Gardner's Fenway Court Museum.
On a Note to You, the first movement from the second piano trio by Arthur Foote, and it was played by Virginia Eskin piano, Jules Eskin cello, and Joseph Silverstein violin. That was music that was premiered at the Gardner Museum about 90 years ago, a fine Boston institution.
You can just imagine a small audience that she would have culled together listening to the fine musicians from the Boston Symphony, whom were frequent guests at her museum house. He had many friends in the orchestra, and even though the Kneisel Quartet seems to be mentioned as doing most of the chamber music premieres, most of his orchestral pieces received their premiere with the BSO.
Let's talk about the orchestration that Pierre Monteur commissioned, the night piece for flute and strings.
This piece has a kind of a French quality because it's light, and you can sense maybe a summer night, the light coming in from a full moon. It's not meant to be anything more than it is, a nice enjoyment of beautiful harmonies.
This is A Note to You with Virginia Eskin, and what we just heard was Arthur Foote's A Night Piece for flute and strings, played by Alexa Still and the New Zealand Chamber Orchestra, Nicholas Braithwaite, conducting them. It was composed in 1918 for flute and string quartet, and then Monteur commissioned the arrangement for string orchestra and premiered by the Boston Symphony in 1923 with the Boston Symphony's great flute soloist Georges Laurent. Any idea of why he stopped composing after this? This is the last piece listed in his catalog, and he lived for another 15 years.
Why he stopped composing, I don't know, because he had a very good connection with Arthur P. Schmidt, who was everybody's publisher, and that music was being sold in Europe. So I think he was one of those sort of people who was content with his lot. He wasn't at all like poor Schumann, who arced out and had a very sad end. This man has a full life, and he has a lot of friends, and there's kind of a nice quote that goes with the night piece that we just listened to. Perfect in its kind and degree, the piece. And the reviewer adds, for the audience, there was nothing left but round upon round of applause directed toward our eldest composer for his years, his work, and his life. Just like the way his mother said that he wasn't pretty from babyhood, but that he had a total absence of sullenness. There's really a sunny shaft in his life, and he wasn't a tormented individual. He didn't have any kind of manic depressive quality, and that can cut against you, of course. That can make you seem maybe too pleasant and too kick back. But I love his music.
Well, the Boston Symphony clearly did too. They premiered, or actually commissioned, the orchestration of night music. They also premiered his Suite in E major in 1909 and played it the day after he died,
right,
as a tribute to him. Let's talk a bit about the suite, which concludes with that big fugue.
Right, which is always the sort of top banana thing to throw into a piece. It's well written. There's something for everyone. It's as pleasurable as Copland or Piston, the other icons in American music.
And it certainly has a classical form, in beginning with a prelude, a second movement, which is a pizzicato and adagietto, and it concludes with a fugue. Here's a recording made by the Boston Symphony Orchestra just 3 years after Arthur Foote's death in 1937. We'll hear the fugue from Arthur Foote's Suite in E major for string orchestra, opus 63, the Boston Symphony, conducted by Serge Koussevitzky. the fugue from Arthur Foote's Suite in E major for string orchestra, his Opus 63, composed in 1907 and recorded in March of 1940 by the Boston Symphony Orchestra, conducted by Serge Koussevitzky. This is A Note to You. The subject is Arthur Foote. And Virginia, can you characterize Arthur Foote in the context of his other Boston School colleagues?
I think there's an honesty of phrase, and there's a grateful quality to his music. You know, he's celebrating life, and if you look at somebody like Arthur Farwell, who was an Indianist, his music has very much of an ethnic quality. MacDowell was interested in Celtic, Scottish themes. Beach, you can say, sounds like Dvorak. Chadwick is really Germanic in mold. And Foote, I think, has the German skill at orchestration and instrumentation and harmony, but he has that, what I call that American open, blue sky quality. You know, it sort of floats up in a nice, buoyant way.
Well, we'll be listening closely to some of those Boston School composers in the near future on A Note to You with Virginia Eskin. The series producer is John Emery, and we have production help from Les Miller. The engineer for today's program was Antonio Oliart-Ros. If you'd like to have a list of all the music played on today's program, email us at notetoyou, one word, at juno.com. That's notetoyou@juno.com. This is program 9852. Be sure to let us know when you heard it and the call letters of your local public radio station. A Note to You, the broadcast legacy of Roland Nadeau, is made possible by the friends and alumni of Northeastern University and by the Thomas F. Simmons Music Endowment, established at Northeastern by Simmons Industries. We're a co-production of Northeastern University and WGBH Boston.